welcome to the Next Rung podcast. My name's Jo. I am in my third year at the University of Chichester studying the Chartered Manager degree apprenticeship. Over to Matt.
Yeah, and I'm Matthew. I'm a first year accounting and finance student at the University of Chichester.
So we're here today joined by Emily, who was an accounting, business studies, an event management degree, and now works for Enterprise. So Emily, could you tell us a bit about your current role and the path you've taken to get there?
Yeah, so I've actually very recently in the last month been promoted to area manager at Enterprise. I came to Enterprise through another student that was at the University of Chichester, Hayley. She referred me. She was on a placement year. I didn't do a placement as part of my degree. Started in the September after I graduated, so 7 years ago. And then I worked my way up through the graduate program with Enterprise, became an assistant manager in 18 months, then 2 years later became a branch manager, and then a month ago became an area manager.
Wow, that's pretty extensive from graduating to where you are now. Thank you.
What would you say have been the best things about your job so far, and what have been some of the challenges that you faced as well?
So the best part about my job is the people that I work with, 100%. It's quite a high pressured environment working at Enterprise. It's much more than just renting cars, which it looks like on the outside. But I've met everybody starts, so Enterprise promotes from within. So you have to start at the bottom Enterprise, so everybody starts in the same place. And it's so you meet a lot of like-minded individuals. You've often got quite a lot in common with people, and I've made some real friends for life with Enterprise. And it's just watch them. Some of them have got married, some of them have had kids, and it's been just that's the best bit. I guess the most challenging part is having really high expectations for myself. It's to get, obviously, where it's promoted from within, you're kind of everybody you're going up against, your competition, so you know where you're ranked and how you perform compared to the people that are going for the same roles as you. So performance is very, it's very important to Enterprise. So I set high expectations of myself, which can sometimes be a real challenge to then meet. If you're not perfect, it can sometimes be a bit demotivating, but obviously nobody's perfect and it's okay to make mistakes and whatever else. So
Thank you, Emily. So that kind of leads us to, did you find the graduate role during your degree or afterwards? So you said you graduated and then you started in the September, and that was one of the questions from another student.
So I found it during my final year, but it was also kind of brought to me as well. So I did a module, and I can't remember what it was called now, but it was basically about being promotable and having your LinkedIn set up and everything like that. And I remember thinking in sort of just before Christmas, I should probably start going for interviews and looking at where I want to be and deciding whether I was going to stay in Chichester or move back to where my mum and dad lived. So it was something that I was looking at roles, and then, as I say, one of my old housemates, Hayley, was on an internship with Enterprise, and she was like you should go for this. It's like I've really enjoyed it, having fun. She worked at Heathrow, and I was like, I'd applied for a couple of jobs and hadn't even heard back for an interview or anything. It can be quite relentless, applying. Applied for this, and I went through 3 stages of interviews, but all before I graduated. So I actually got offered the job the same day as my summer ball in the May, but obviously started in the September. So that was quite a good day, actually.
Yeah, that sounds it. So you started pretty early, I suppose, in terms of your search and finishing your degree.
I started early, but I think my first interview with Enterprise was around sort of March, April time.
How did the degree that you did prepare you for entering the workplace, a place like Enterprise, where obviously, like you said, there's a lot of competition, a lot of people make their way up through the company. How did your degree kind of prepare you for entering a workplace like that?
I guess so. For my dissertation, I did like the events management side of it. So we did like a rocks event in Hoffman Park, and it's very like, it's quite cutthroat. Like if you don't get it right, it's wrong. So it's kind of taught me to be resilient, taught me to kind of pick myself up if something didn't go the way I wanted it to or the way I thought it had gone. And then obviously the business side of it kind of teaches you because ultimately at Enterprise, as much as it's not my own business, I'm given the tools and I'm allowed to make the decisions that I want for my branches. So I am ultimately running a business. So all of the like behind the scenes, knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to conduct myself in a professional way, knowing how to be interview ready, and always. I think before my degree, if at the end of an interview, if they'd have said any questions, I probably would have got up and walked out and gone, no, that's it, thank you very much, because you've just had a barrage of questions.
Yeah.
But one of the things I remember very distinctly being taught was that never leave an interview without asking a question. So things like that.
Yeah, I think everybody's done that at least once when they've had an interview. They just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
From what you learned as well during your degree, what skills and knowledge have you applied most since leaving the university? So that could be related to what you learned. That could be kind of like soft skills, communication, working in a team, things like that. What have you applied most since leaving the university?
I think definitely teamwork. I think at Enterprise, you definitely can't work by yourself. It's not a lone job. It's definitely a team job. And we've all been in group work scenarios where there's somebody in the group that you don't necessarily get on with, or they're not doing what you want them to do, or they're not doing what you think they should be doing. And it's kind of taught me you're always going to come across people like that. In every single team you work in, there's always going to be people that aren't your cup of tea, or you just don't mix with. And it's learning you don't have to be everyone's friend, you don't have to be the same as everyone, but being able to work collaboratively is like the most important skill I probably learned.
Interesting.
And what piece of advice would you give to current students at the University of Chichester with regards to employability and career progression? I know you kind of spoke about some of that, but is there anything specific or that you would give?
I think it's definitely be open. Like I think had Hayley not told me about Enterprise, I probably wouldn't have even applied, because I'm not really into my cars. Didn't like working in customer service, wasn't really something that I wanted to do. I'd worked in customer service in all my part-time roles during uni, before uni, and yeah, if I'd have seen that on Indeed or whatever website that you're using, I probably would have skipped past it. But I think it's just, especially in a market where we can't really be that picky, just be open to it. Because as I said, if I hadn't listened to Hayley, I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in. And I do genuinely believe that like Enterprises was definitely for me, and I wouldn't have known that had I not given it a chance.
Yeah, okay, no, it's really useful to know, because sometimes you have a particular maybe company or type of company that you might be interested in working for, but actually thinking about the kind of trying different things. I suppose going to an interview you might learn a bit more, isn't it, and things like that as well.
Would you say there's anything with hindsight that you'd have done differently, maybe during university or after graduating university, getting into the workplace? Would you have done anything differently with hindsight?
No idea. No, like I think, if you asked my mum and dad, they'd probably tell you I probably should have studied more. But I left university with a 2-1. I'm very happy with that. And I think you have got to work hard and play hard. Some people that's going to work for more than others, but no, I think I left university and I'm proud of what I've done since coming to university. I definitely was one of those people that really wanted to travel, and I didn't travel after I left A levels, because I was like, no, if I go traveling now, I'm never going to go back to education. And then obviously got my degree, was offered the job to start in September, and I was like, oh well, I can't travel now because I've got the job and I don't want to lose that opportunity. And now I'm like, oh, well, I can't go traveling now because I'm in my position that I'm in. But I think everybody's goals are different. I don't look back and regret not traveling, but if I was to do it again, would I maybe have pushed my start date a little bit? Maybe, but no, like I don't think there's anything I would have done differently.
Good.
Thank you. What would be one of the biggest learning curves you had since joining your current organisation, would you say?
Is that don't forget about pride. I think sometimes, especially we deal with a lot of complaints. We're very customer serviced at Enterprise, and sometimes when a customer's moaning or complaining about me or my branch, especially when I was a branch manager, it can feel quite personal, like they're attacking you. So it kind of my pride was to defend my business rather than you've actually I've now realized you've got to listen to what they're saying and just appease them. The customer might not always be right, but as long as they think they're always right, then that's always that's the biggest win. So yeah, that wasn't the easiest thing to learn, but it's definitely been the most impactful.
So about your current job and about the current workforce, what employability skills do you think are vital in the current working environment?
I think work ethic and sort of time management, communication. I think especially at Enterprise, some days we can have some quite long days. We have contracted hours, but our day doesn't finish until it's finished. But then we do have a lot of we give time back a lot. So it's not, you might work, we close at 6 o'clock. One day you might work till 7, but the next day you might finish at 4 o'clock. So you've definitely got to have the sort of the work ethic to be able to work around that. But then also the communication side of it comes into it. So say, you play football on a Wednesday, you need to be able to communicate with your manager. A Wednesday, I cannot work late because I have I go and play football or whatever it is that you do. And they're like, right, okay, we need to make sure that Emily leaves at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, but she can work late on a Thursday to pick up where everybody else covered for her the night before if they have to. And time management. Because for us, we're a very customer service driven company. We get measured on our customer service scores, and we need 85% of our customers to be completely satisfied after every time they rent. So basically, the easiest way to describe that is as long as the car is clean and on time, the customer 9 times out of 10 is happy. So time management is really, really important.
Thank you.
Thank you. As you kind of said, you kind of got through a number of promotions since starting. Was that kind of always the plan? Were you quite ambitious in terms of next steps, or was it just kind of fell into a lap or some opportunities?
I think, yeah, I guess so. At Enterprise, you do so before you start, they do a week-long intensive training, and they kind of go through where it can take you. So I didn't have to become an area manager. I could have gone into HR or marketing, or I could have used my events degree and gone into events with Enterprise. There's basically you name it, they've got it. But I remember sitting and they kind of show you the pay structure and how it can all work, because we're also a commission based company, so everybody's got a salary but we get paid on commission. And I remember looking and thinking, right, my goal is to get to area manager, and they then give you other people's case studies, almost be like, oh, this person got there in this time frame, this person got there in this time frame, and you kind of sit and I planned out my sort of 5-year career goals. And my goal was to always get to area manager before I turned 30, which I did, which I have done. I'm not yet 30. And I guess, and now it's a case of, I was literally saying to my friend that works at Enterprise, he's an area manager as well, and I said, what now? I've reached my goal. I don't even though I've only been doing this job 5 minutes, I'm I need to know where I'm going next. And I haven't figured out what that is yet, but I think, yeah, because Enterprise, we have good days, we also have some really bad days, and I think having my own end goal in sight really helped me get where I wanted to be. So yeah, now it's a case of, right, even though I've only just started, what next?
Yeah.
Great. So you obviously did business studies and events management. Would you recommend that? And what advice would you give to new students, maybe the ones who are in the first year who are just doing their first few modules of that degree? Would you give them any tips on how to do well in that degree?
I guess make sure you attend the lectures. There was a lot more that I learned being in the classroom rather than, you know, being online, that was uploaded online. I also think, like, make sure that you've like ask questions and kind of enjoy what you're doing, because when I started at the University of Chichester, I wasn't doing business studies and event management. I was doing IT and events, the IT management for business and events. And it got to a point where I realized that I wasn't enjoying the IT side of it. Like, as much as that's what I wanted to do when I left school, and that's what I enjoyed, the degree side of it, I really didn't like. And I remember speaking to my academic advisor at the time, and I was just like, right, what can I do? And he showed me all of so this was in my second year that I ended up changing. And he kind of brought up all of the modules that I'd done and what degree I could swap onto, and not have to do any extra. And that's when I swapped over to the generic business with events, because events management is what I wanted to do before I did my dissertation. That's what I wanted to go into eventually, leaving uni. But my parents had always said to me, no, you need more than just events management. You can't do anything with an event management degree, which I don't necessarily agree with, by the way. But I was very much like, oh, I can't go and tell my mum and dad I've dropped part of my degree. So yeah, I picked up the business side of it. And yeah, I think I've actually forgotten the question, if I'm honest, but it was more like the generic business side of it is what opened up everything to me, in terms of knowing like what to do, where to go, how to like hold myself in a business environment, because I knew ultimately, whether it was events or not, being, you know, in a business environment, you know, wearing the suit that everybody thinks is really glamorous and commuting into London, like that's what I wanted to do. But when I was at uni.
Thank you.
We had another student question. So when you were looking for kind of graduate roles, was there any website or tools that you found useful in deciding what you wanted to do, or after graduation, or in preparation for graduation?
I guess the one I didn't end up getting to Enterprise through Indeed, but the one that I looked on was the only one I looked on was Indeed. And then yeah, I guess the main one is also LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a really easy one, because you can also reach out to people directly and ask them questions about interview tips and things to prepare for. Like, if you're going for an enterprise interview, for example, which is the only interview I ended up getting, so it's the only one I can comment on, but for enterprise, you know, I was asked a load of questions about the history of the company and where it had come from and what the business mission and statements were, and obviously it was Hayley that helped me with that interview. But you know, reach out to people on LinkedIn and ask those questions, because had I not spoken to somebody prior to the interview, when they asked me that question, it would have been completely blank face, because I wouldn't have been able to answer it. And it's not the kind of question that you can kind of blag your way out of, put it that way. So yeah, LinkedIn and Indeed would be the biggest ones.
Thank you. And can I ask, did you do a placement during your degree?
I didn't. I did apply for a placement, and then just things happened. Just decided to take it off during my second year, so I never did it.
Okay, thank you.
So I suppose we've kind of covered, but what would your next career steps be, in terms of you've made it to your area manager? Is there anything next for the studies, or would you consider anything else?
I have no idea. I'm really enjoying the working in a team environment. I couldn't see myself, because I think if you'd have asked me this a year ago, I probably would have told you that once I'd gotten to area manager, I'd sidestepped into a HR role, or one of the marketing roles, or something like that. But they're very like one person. They're not really big teams. Whereas I now, like, I definitely prefer working as part of a team. But there are steps above area manager, so I can become a city manager and cover, you know, counties rather than just towns and cities. So, but yeah, it's just never something I'd considered. I didn't think it would be something that would be for me, but yeah, I have no idea, put it that way.
Fair enough. What impact would you say have you had on the organisation since you joined? If there's been any kind of changes to the processes, any changes to the culture, would you say you've had any impact on
I think a big thing for enterprise, because it's promote from within, they're very big on when to get into positions like branch manager or area manager, they like you to have a legacy, so people that are below you that you kind of train to get to a position. And it might not have had much of an impact on the business as a whole. Obviously enterprise is global, but in terms of my direct city, there are branch managers now that have been my trainees or my assistants, that are now doing really, really well. And yeah, at every interview I'll go to, there'll be names that I'll bring up and that talk about that they're my legacy. And I think the business is always moving forward, and it's constantly like our goal is to always make more profit than we did the year before, as with any business. And I would say there are some people that can do that and there are some people that can't do that. And it's quite nice that like the people that are part of my legacy are the people that can do that, which probably has quite a big impact on the company as well.
For sure. Thank you. Right, perfect. I think that takes the questions to an end then, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, thank you
so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our interview with Emily, former Chichester alumni. What did you think were the most interesting parts about that interview?
I think one of the key things for me was about how she kind of wasn't really looking for enterprise, but kind of expanded some of her options and recommendations from other people. So that was quite interesting. It's actually, rather than just going in for one thing that you think will work, is actually thinking about what other things can.
Yeah, I think staying kind of flexible with your career choices, because sometimes you will go into a business where, as she said, she wasn't really that interested in cars or car rentals and things like that. But obviously she's ended up there and she's gone from strength to strength. So it's interesting how sometimes you can end up in a business or an industry where you initially weren't too interested in. I also found it quite interesting that she has remained in that company since graduating, so obviously it was very important that she got that graduate role, because it's still the same company that she's in to this day, and she's gone from strength to strength throughout the business, working in different locations, things like that. So yeah, I think kind of highlights the importance of getting a good graduate role.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think she obviously started early as well in terms of having to look at some of those roles, and then I suppose even though she wasn't successful getting some interviews before, it might have actually encouraged her to then look at something else. Whereas if she kind of started a bit later, she might not have looked or been maybe thinking, actually maybe I could just give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think having that kind of mindset where you may have a few setbacks, you may have a few interviews that don't go so well, a few placement applications where they don't reply, to not let it really get to your head, to keep on pushing, and again keep your options open, because you might end up in an industry that you never expected to be in, but it could set you up for a great career.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that even in her second year she then changed to do the kind of business.
I didn't know that actually.
No, yeah,
just now.
From the IT. So I suppose in terms of actually, like she said, go to the classes and make sure you really interested in what you're learning, and then speak to kind of your lecturers or academic kind of associate if there's you're not thinking actually it might not be right for me, but what could I do instead? It was good. It was actually in her second year. I thought she was going to say it was her first year.
So again, that thing of keeping your options open. And keeping an open mind about what you might like to study, what you might like to do afterwards if you're within your studies. Don't just think, oh, I need to stick within my degree. Consider other options.
Yeah. I think it was interesting what she said, the last sort of just around getting some kind of inside information in terms of kind of what would they ask in interviews and stuff. So potentially maybe could go via, if you've already kind of graduated or thinking of graduate, go via the careers team, and maybe they could ask if there's anyone like Emily. She might be like, well, actually I did this and this, and then could provide some kind of insider info if people are interested in that industry, or just other industries, isn't it, as well? Would probably be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all in all, very informative. Learned quite a few things about her career and how she, what she's done since graduating from Chichester. And I think all in all, very informative.